A lot of people think that this is the most disturbing part of the end of life, but most people don't know what it actually is. In this video, I'm going to discuss the notorious terminal secretions, aka the death rattle. I'll talk about what it is, why it's happening, actually have you hear what it really sounds like, and what we can do about it. I think with the more education we have about this, the less we will fear it. So before I show the video, which I think they are perfect examples of the death rattle or terminal secretions, I want to talk to you about what it actually is. So terminal secretions happen during the actively dying phase. The actively dying phase is the last phase of life. So usually a few hours to a few days before someone dies, you will start hearing this noise, which is why they call it the death rattle, because you don't usually start hearing it until right before someone dies. The main point to this video is that the death rattle is expected. It's actually normal. It's a normal part of end of life, and nothing quote unquote bad is happening when you hear it. So what is it? All throughout our lives, we are creating saliva in our mouth. Our beautiful body is working for us and creating saliva in our mouth so our mouth won't be forever dry, right? It's uncomfortable to have a dry mouth. So our mouth creates saliva. Our brain tells our muscles to swallow that saliva all throughout the day unconsciously. When we get close to the end of life, our brain is not really working to tell our muscles to swallow, but it's still creating the saliva so we don't have a dry mouth. So that little bit of saliva starts gathering in the back of the person's throat. See how I just swallowed right there? Automatic, right? But the saliva starts collecting in the back of the throat, and because the person is breathing with their mouth open, because they're so relaxed at the end of life, that wet breath is going over even just a teensy little bit of saliva, and it creates a gurgling noise. So most people think it's coming from their lungs. They're drowning on fluids. I've even heard other healthcare professionals say something like this. That is not what's happening. Just on a sidebar, when I used to work in the ICU, people were fluid overloaded a lot, meaning given a lot of fluid and their body couldn't handle the fluid. In those circumstances, sometimes someone could be having a gurgling noise because they were fluid overloaded, which does mean it could be coming from their lungs. There could be some respiratory distress that could be happening. But I would say 9.9 times out of 10 on hospice, that is not what's happening because they are not fluid overloaded. If anything, they are dehydrated, which again, I've said in many videos, is a good thing on hospice. So now that we know why it's happening, let me tell you why we know they're not suffering. People always ask that. Well, if they can't tell you, how do you know they're not bothered by this, right? And it's because of our non-verbal cues. Healthcare workers have been doing this long enough, and we learn in school and have just had a lot of evidence in our practice that when a dying person is unconscious, they are still able to non-verbally show us if they are uncomfortable by furrowing of the brow, by acting agitated or restless, meaning like they're not sitting still in bed, they are continuously trying to get out of bed, they are moaning. If you go to touch them, they move away or guard, we call it. There's tons of evidence that can be shown non-verbally to us if someone is uncomfortable. And when they are not doing that, that indicates that they are likely comfortable. The person experiencing the death rattle is likely unconscious, completely unaware it's even happening. So that is how we usually know that they are not being bothered by it and they are okay and comfortable. So let's get to this first video. So this was given to me by a follower of mine. This is not my patient. And I want to show you two different videos because one gives you like a lighter example, like a quieter, softer example of the death rattle or terminal secretions. And the second one I'll show you is when someone is closer to death and how that might sound. So trigger warning, here is the video. I wanted you to hear that so you know what it actually sounds like. I think people hear the death rattle for the first time, specifically coming from someone they love. It's unexpected, they don't know what it is, and it can really scare you. You know, you're already in a scary, sad moment, and then hearing this can really make you feel really, really uncomfortable. So I think it's good for us to know what to expect, know what it sounds like. And that's a perfect example of how, quote unquote, like wet or gurgly a death rattle can sound like. And if you notice, this person is just laying there, mouth open, they look super comfortable, they're not heavily breathing. To me as a hospice nurse, they look totally okay. Now, what can we do about it, right? What can we do about this? One, we don't have to do anything about it. That's the first thing. We just know that it's okay and they look comfortable. You don't have to do anything about it. But a lot of people want to do something about it. They want to make sure their loved one's comfortable, or they don't like how it sounds. So what can you do about it? You can lift them up in bed a bit, and then lift their head of bed using the electric bed most people will have on hospice. Lift their head up so they're more like a 60-degree angle. And a lot of times that can clear it up, just the maneuver, right? Sometimes that will work for a little bit, and then again, of course, it's going to start again. That's the thing, is you can do all these things, but it's going to start again. So you're gonna have to keep redoing them over and over, which is okay, and people do that. Another thing you can do is turn them on their side, just like this, and the saliva will eventually just come out. And you might actually be surprised by how little you actually see, because a little bit of saliva seems to make a lot of noise. So those are two things you can do that are practical and you don't have to use medications. There are also medications you can use, and they're usually provided by your hospice team. So every hospice uses something else. They use something called Levocin, which is a pill that goes under someone's tongue that will help dry out the mouth. Something called atropine, which are actually eye drops, but you put them in the person's mouth. That will dry up the secretions. Sometimes they use the They also sometimes use the scopolamine. You guys, I can't say it. Scopolamine. There we go. Scopolamine patch behind the ear. That can also help. So there are different things you can do medication-wise to decrease the death rattle. However, you will have to continue to keep giving those medications because it will build back up, and it does give your loved one a dry mouth. So I like to educate about it first before I go directly to using medications, because it's really not harming your loved one, and sometimes having a dry mouth is uncomfortable. The third thing you can do is a suction machine. Now, we don't usually advise you to do this. Now, they do it all the time in the hospital because that's the culture there. You can do it in your home. You can ask your hospice company for a portable suction machine, and you can suction out the secretions. The reasons why we say not to do this is, one, because it'll create more saliva. The more you're introducing like a foreign object into the mouth, it's going to make the mouth want to create more saliva. And two, it can be uncomfortable and gag your loved one. But it is an option if the family wants it. This last video, I really want to show this last video. I've never shown something like this before because it shows what a death rattle might sound like right before someone dies. This is what the family told me when they sent this video, that it was very close to the person's death. And I want to show you how there is a difference. It gets a little louder, a little wetter, and I just think it's important that we can hear this and understand it. So trigger warning, here's the video. I have a feeling a lot of you guys may be cringing right now because that is hard to listen to, but I want to explain what was going on. To me, coming from a hospice nurse, it's a beautiful example of someone still being able to preserve their airway. So did you hear how he kind of went, ah, and it gurgled, right? That is his body preserving his airway. It probably got a little too close to the airway, and his body still automatically basically coughed it, protected his airway, and he did it well, and it cleared. But you also could hear how it's a little more wet, right, and a little louder. If this was my patient, one, I would make sure the family understood, hey, this is totally normal. He seems okay. There's nothing wrong here. And because it's a little loud, I would probably maneuver him around, maybe turn him on his side to get the secretions out, just so it wouldn't sound so loud and just so he wouldn't have to work to clear his airway if he needed to again. So great job sticking with me through this video. I know videos like this can be hard to watch, but I think they are so important. Education is key during these last phases of life that can be really, really hard on the loved ones, helping their loved one while they are in the dying process. So thank you for sticking with me. I hope this video can bring you some comfort. And remember, learning about the death and dying process will help you live better and die better.